Welcome, everyone. I'm currently away on vacation and will be back Wednesday, October 22nd. Today, your host will be Larry Goldberg. Larry co-founded several companies and is now an active venture capital investor.
So welcome, Jeff.
Larry, great to be with you.
Yeah, so I'm sitting in again, and we're back.
Yeah.
So you can call me Herbert Goldberg or Herberg or whatever you want, actually. Jeff, let's talk about some of the fun posts you had last week. This week, I guess, rumors of a small Y, MY, and Model 3 in China. What's going on?
I've always thought that Tesla Model Y is a hit. So the Model Y is, launched in 2020, up rev several times, simplified, cost reduced, improved. It is a smash hit. And when you have a smash hit product like this, the key thing you want to do is you want to leverage your capital as much as possible and leverage that CapEx and honestly take a concept that works in the marketplace and expand upon it. So this is very common in the smartphone world as well. Once you had a hit product, if you look at iPhone, for example, bigger iPhones are made, smaller iPhones are made, cost reduced iPhones are made, and you can see the total sales of that platform net growing. And companies that do this well do the other versions at a margin neutral perspective, meaning that they're making the right provisions in product and in engineering and in manufacturing and supply chain. So if they do, for example, the standard Model Y, can they launch that at equivalent margin structure as the main version? And the same thing goes for the smaller version. This makes total sense because from a physics and mass perspective, you can shrink the vehicle, keep it on the same component platform. So all the stuff they buy from the outside from suppliers is leveraged. So that volume per part number from all these suppliers grows. And then the parts that actually physically shrink and change are the parts that are controlled in Tesla factories. And those are robotic programming changes. Those are line setup changes. Those are which allows Tesla to leverage that existing CapEx. So everybody gets their CapEx leverage. The parts that change are in Tesla's four walls. This is why a lot of these things don't leak, by the way. And I think it makes a lot of sense to extend the Y platform and get more volume out of it.
I always thought that the extension of the Y platform wouldn't be in the long version at first, it would be in the short version at first, because that seemed to be the natural expansion of TAM. And yet they've gone for the long version, which to me, it's a product that obviously has some demand, but nothing like I think would happen in the short version. Do you agree with that?
Oh, in terms of priority, why do they go? Well, I think the longer version actually is a bit easier for them to do. When you actually start shrinking your available packaging area, you all of a sudden you bump into constraints that weren't there before. This is why when you look at the production of a smartphone or a very thin tablet, there's actually a lot. If you were to take and open up one of those things, there's a high density of components. And if you were to take that thing and say, okay, my smartphone, it can be the size of my laptop, well, then a lot of trade-offs go away. Antenna performance, battery, anything. You can have a 3-day, 4-day, 5-day battery if your smartphone could be the size of your laptop. So most times shrinking a product actually starts bumping you into tolerances and complexities that weren't there before. So there may have been other reasoning behind it as well. And again, we don't know if they're even going to do a smaller version, but there was certainly a demand and need for a longer Model Y, this more 6-seater version, and getting this thing in at $55,000 to $60,000. When the Model X, is $20,000-$30,000 higher is actually a really good portfolio move for Tesla because there's good separation between those vehicles, but you get a more economical offering.
And what do you think about the CyberCab using the CyberCab's method of production and construction and building a small car out of it, 4-seater with or without steering wheel. I mean, we know that the CyberCab can have a steering wheel. We've seen them with steering wheels. What about using that whole methodology of production, the whole design concept, and not necessarily, stretching it a little bit in terms of having the extra 2 seats at the back? They've got a lot of space at the back anyway. What do you think about that?
It's not
3 seats.
trivial. It's
Yeah.
not trivial, but it's not beyond the laws of physics, which means if Tesla wanted to do it, they would do it. There would be a tremendous amount of re-engineering involved to add another row of seats and re-engineer the whole. I mean, you're re-engineering basically the whole vehicle when you're doing something like that, and because you change all the different inflection points and stress points as it relates to reliability, as it relates to squeak and rattle and vibration, as it relates to accidents, safety. So it's not to me it's not beyond the laws of physics, but it's not trivial. Adding the steering wheel and the pedals, we'd have to see how they engineered it. We don't know how they. We know the test vehicles clearly have those control inputs. They just need to be installed. We don't know how the production vehicles are engineered, but I'm guessing that actually that's a good thought experiment. Will that capability be in the production CyberCab or not? But the point is that is more doable than adding the second row of seating. That I mean they're both doable. One is, I think, level of complexity much higher.
Yeah, Farzad's, he's lobbied for selling the CyberCab to end users. And I think there's a very significant market there for a runaround, a 2-seater runaround. Why it needs
with the steering wheel.
Yeah, with a steering wheel. I have to ask Farzad, why would it need a steering wheel? Why couldn't it just be without steering wheel? But I guess that's what he thinks is the classic.
I think we'll be having a different conversation. I always like thinking a year from now, because quite frankly, the CyberCab that's under development won't be at volume probably for another year. It would slow down the Tesla CyberCab deployment to do another version on top of it. So why I bring that up is, where's self-driving going to be a year from now? It's probably going to be amazing. I mean, Elon thinks that the current version can 10x improve inside of just the current version alone. So that's what you have to ask yourself. Well, I think we're going to be in a different mindset a year from now. I don't think.
Yeah, we may not be thinking about producing any vehicles at all. Yeah, I mean, we may finally get into Elon's mindset.
Well, I'm not in the, we're not producing vehicles, but not needing to touch the steering wheel or controls.
Yeah.
I think we'll be in a different mindset. And I also think a year from now that there will be a safe GROK vehicle control integration, where it's like, hey, can we avoid construction? Or hey, can you go a little faster? Can we change speed profiles? Or things like that. It's not going to be, turn right here, things like that, but it's going to be things of, can you avoid certain things, or can you change certain things? And that's going to be a whole other level of control that we don't have today with FSD.
Right. I think one of the more interesting features that and this is an aside, because you brought up the idea of the GROK control. I would love to be able to tell the map, this is not my preferred route. I want you to take this route instead, and have a colloquy about routes, because I take the dog to the dog park every day and it keeps taking the wrong route, and I keep having to actually, switch off my destination and then switch it on again after it's continued past the turn that it would have made, blah, blah, blah. And so that would be, the kind of integration I'd love to see, but that's just a personal.
I think it's doable. And I think there's a high use case for route preference. And because there's a couple of particular routes where I go home from certain places, and I'm always wanting to turn earlier than Google Maps, and there's an option in there. You just have to press the screen. So at some point, it's gonna be like, hey, you've done this twice. Do you want to save this preference? There's no
Right.
reason why that can't happen.
Yeah, and sometimes it doesn't give you what is really your preferred. It gives you a different route, but not. Anyway, that's. I mean, that would be the only real, possibility for me of dramatically improving FSD, because it's getting to a point now that it's amazing. But I wish
It
they would
is.
speed up their large car releases. They're just releasing right now for the Y3. It really would be good to release for the large cars early as well. I guess once the next data center is opened, I think that will change. The world will change. But right now, I think they're really constrained. Let's talk about tariffs. Jeff, I am so confused. I have no idea where we are anymore. Where are we, Mr. Tariff?
Yeah. By the way, like I have a long history of building product and distributing over 150 countries, and for years I often wondered, for a couple decades, why isn't the U.S. tariffing more? Everybody else, like, that isn't like a throwaway line at a campaign stump speech. That was actually happening, and I'm here to tell you that it's actually happening. And the inbound tariffs we were paying, and the hoops we had to jump through were vicious in Brazil, Argentina, you name it. And they're I mean, they're huge. They're massive in some countries. Some other countries not so much, but in general, given how big our market is to sell product, it was very surprising that everybody was doing this to us and we weren't doing it to them. Now, fast forward to where we are this year. I've been very vocal that I agree with tariffs, and I agree with the need and the concept. I don't agree with how we've approached a lot of them. We are tariffing the inputs of things that we don't grow or make in the US. We can't actually get our hands on these things, and then we're telling people to bring the assemblies that those things go into, or starting to sell those things here, but we're telling them that we're going to charge them more to bring that stuff in, and we have no capacity to make it here. There's so many examples of that. Our aluminum capacity is a fraction of what our total consumption is. Our unrefined copper and refined copper consumption is a fraction of sorry, our production is a fraction of that. And I never understand. That's the part I don't understand. So it looks like what's happening. So what's happened throughout the years, we've had these starts and stops. We had Liberation Day, April 2nd. We had, and by the way, that started affecting ships that were leaving, arriving in port in May. So I think a lot of people just didn't understand the timing of supply chain, what happens. There's huffing and puffing going all the way in April 2nd. There was even stuff going on in Mexico and in Canada prior. So what was everybody doing? They were building up inventory. And in the auto industry, and you name it, everybody they were just getting ready. Like, okay, I can bring the inventory in. I have a bit of a cash problem when I do this, but I'm bringing this stuff in at much lower prices. These tariffs are going to be 30 or 50%. I'm going to do it. So that's what people did. April 2nd, they go on. April 9th, all of a sudden, there's a pause. There's a pause on April 9th. And then from April 9th through July, everything's basically at a floor of about 10%, which is already, double or triple our effective tariff rate on the world prior. So a lot of people don't understand that was already, inching things up, even though it was a quote unquote pause. And then really in July and August is when the real major tariffs went on, between, call it 15 to 30%. European Union, Japan, South Korea, these places where we import high volumes of product. And of course, China, which was brought back from the brink, 140 some plus tariffs, and that was brought down to around an effective rate of 30% on some things. A lot of things that are near and dear to the Tesla community, there's some that are even higher, like lithium ion, for example, graphite. There was actually talk of moving graphite to a significantly a battery grade graphite. That one I think paused for a bit. But long story short, on off, inventory buildup, inventory relief, inventory buildup, relief. We're probably right now just burning off the inventory from the July August tariffs for the countries that went on, and you are starting to see it's just a mixed bag. The news wants to tell you that it's all one monolith, and then the administration wants to tell you it's all some other monolith, like all these countries are paying. The news wants to tell you that America, this is a tax on Americans. They're both wrong. I mean, it's the answer is it's market based. If there's high demand for a product here, then the importer actually the importer has a fair amount of leverage. If there's low demand for a product, actually the importer has demand as leverage over that situation too. It's really honestly dependent on the category and the TAM and the demand for that product in the receiving market. So where we are today, I mean, there's a big negotiation coming up with China, but what's happening in the background, I think the Commerce Department is seeing that they are destroying some industries. The auto industry, the U.S. auto industry is really reeling from this. These USMCA supply chains were set up over 4 to 6 years, inextricably linked to Mexico, inextricably linked to Canada. Things are coming in tariff free. They took very high labor content items like transmissions and engines and put them down at $2 effective labor rate, $2 to $10 labor rate regions in Mexico, even though the USMCA mandates $16 an hour minimum. The subcontracting that happens down there, these things were happening at much lower rates. So what's happening is there's economic stress on people that are trying to assemble product in the U.S. and trying to bring it here. And I think a little bit of the reverse effect has happened, and the data shows it. We have net manufacturing job loss throughout the year through September in the United States. We have net added negative jobs in manufacturing in the United States. So this whole effect of, hey, it's all coming back, it's starting up, and you can say there's a bit of a time offset with that happening, but I don't think the administration thought that 9 months in, 10 months in, that they would be at net negative jobs from a manufacturing perspective. And those are the facts. And when you talk to people on the ground, come up for air here, they're saying like, look, like we have the economics where we could bring assembly here, but the economics break if you tariff all the inputs. Because if I can build it in Japan and not have to pay a 50% steel tariff, if I can build it in South Korea and not have to pay a 50% copper tariff, I'll import it here for a 15% tariff, the final assembly, because I have lower labor rates there and I have a lower tariff bringing the whole thing in than doing my 50% on all these raw materials and all the Section 232 tariffs, all the Section 301 tariffs that are on for raw materials. So basically, we have to get out of this mode of tariffing inputs if we want to bring assembly here. Assembly is the first stage of all this. We can get that solidified, then I think this really expands and grows. And the administration is starting to look at that now.
So what you're saying is that we're tariffing at the wrong level. We have to tariff at a higher level and exclude the inputs that we need to. But isn't that a progressive thing? Over time, you want to add tariffs back.
On a schedule, right.
On a schedule. Yeah, and if they were to have such a schedule and publish it, then there may be some air to breathe, some oxygen to breathe in terms of.
Yeah, you could put, instead of going 50% on aluminum, you could go 10% and say, look, on a schedule, like we know it takes 5 to 7 years to bring up smelting and to bring up all this capacity in the U.S. So we're going to let's agree on aggressive schedule together, and let's agree on a tariff schedule that escalates. That makes sense. Same for the automakers. We know you can't bring these we know the unit economics don't work. $55 to $60 an hour all in with benefits in the U.S. labor rates for union and non-union, in the 25 to 30 range versus $2 in Vietnam and $6 a net in Mexico, the economics don't work.
Right.
So let's take the inputs and put that on a schedule and say, so this is what they're doing with the auto industry right now. With the auto industry, they came up with something in the summer that basically says we're going to give you a 2-year time window, and we're going to still tariff the inputs, but we're going to give you an MSRP rebate if you produce it in the US and actually ship it and sell it to a consumer or export it out of the
Right.
US. And so what they just did is they just extended that rebate for 5 years. So they're really starting to give the auto industry, and Tesla is going to, by the way, no one's talking about this for Tesla. Tesla gets this rebate. Tesla 100% gets this, will get this rebate because it's on all their cars for the US are made here.
Right. So we're in this transition, and now that what I'm understanding you saying is we're in a transition. We're moving from left to right, as it were, whereas we started by moving right all the way. Now we've moved back left and we're moving back right on a schedule. Is that fully implemented, partially implemented? Where are we?
Partially, it's ad hoc. The auto industry is getting relief now. There's a Wall Street Journal article on Friday that these MSRP rebates are expanding. Let's just take 30 seconds on that, how that works. It's actually pretty smart. It's not good from a cash perspective. This is one reason why you want a short supply chain, not these long, lengthy 200 days of channel inventory and a very long time to build your vehicle. Because what's going to happen for GM, Ford, and whatnot is they're still going to get the inputs are still going to be tariffed. So they're still going to need that cash outlay to bring those parts in. So in supply chain, that cash conversion cycle starts when you have you put liability onto a supplier and you have to order that material, and your dollars or cash is going out from your coffers to those suppliers. So what you want is you want that shortest amount of time. You want the shortest lead times from them. You want the shortest manufacturing times for yourself. And then in the channel, you want the least amount of inventory. You want that turning over very quickly, because as that inventory turns, you get cash coming back into you. So the cash out to your supply base, the cash back in from you to from your consumer, that's the cash conversion cycle. And you want to reduce that network latency. You want to reduce the number of nodes. And this is why a Tesla with, what do they have, 12 days of inventory? I think Tesla actually at some point, probably in early October, were probably blocking sales. Their inventory was so low. But the low inventory and the fast assembly times, manufacturing times from Tesla, it's actually going to work out pretty well for them. They're still going to have to get tariffs on some of their inputs, and their tariffs are going to be lower than all of them because they make most of their parts here. But there are parts for Teslas that absolutely come from China, come from Mexico. Pull your wheel covers off your Cybertruck and turn them over. Anything with really super complex tooling is still being done in China. And so those things are getting tariffed. So what will happen is Tesla will get an MSR rebate based off the sale price of that vehicle. I think it's 3.75%. And that just comes back as dollars from the government to rebate the Tesla. So the cash still goes out. They still pay the tariff. So the Trump administration still gets the credit of look at all the money we're bringing in on tariffs, but they're actually giving rebates on the other side for U.S. assembly of vehicles. I think that whole concept may proliferate to other areas.
How does the rebate work? I don't understand. They pay tariff on the incoming part, and then the rebate comes back to them?
The rebate comes to the OEM. The rebate goes to the OEM.
And when do they get that rebate?
They apply for that rebate. I don't know the exact mechanics, but it's essentially upon sale of the vehicle that
they pay the tariff.
So I don't know if that's FOB. I don't know if that's exit out of the factory or if it actually has to change title. But the point is when they sell the product, they get a rebate based off of the MSRP value of the product.
Right. So the exact moment doesn't matter, but in essence, they pay the tariff when the good lands. Yep. They get cash back, a return of the tariff
on the full assembly.
On the full assembly when they sell the vehicle. So
yeah, it's a couple $1,000. Yeah.
And is that like for like? In other words, they take the total tariff that they've paid on the vehicle?
No, they just came up with a number. They just
Oh,
came up with a number. So they just it's a flat number, and I think it declines after a couple of years. But the point is so yeah, if you have 100%, or let's say you have 99% local sourcing, like Tesla's over 90%, they're still getting the rebate on the full value of the Model S that's made in the factory. So this is really, it was really the auto industry, the lobby going to them and saying, hey, look, this is costing us a couple $1,000s a vehicle, these tariffs. It's killing our, we have no net margins after these tariffs. We're basically just, we're paying the government to build cars here. So can we have some sort of rebate structure where if we bring the assembly here so the government gets to incentivize them to bring the assembly here. If they assemble it here and they ship it in the U.S. or export it, they get a rebate from the government. So
so that
yeah, they still get the
yeah,
tariff credit.
so the state of play right now is that those companies assembling vehicles in Canada and
Do not
Mexico
get this.
are out of luck. That OEMs that assemble vehicles here in the United States, while they pay tariffs on the incoming parts, they get a full rebate on the final vehicle when it leaves the factory or when it's sold, one of the two.
That's
Is
right.
that the
So
summary of where we are?
yeah, and the fastest supply chain wins, because if your cash outlay to suppliers to your sales window is shorter, you're going to be under less cash stress from having to pay the tariff outlay to get your parts to when you sell the vehicle. But if you have this long supply chain, you could really start getting held up here.
So if you were like BYD that pay your supplier after a year, you'd be in great shape.
They'd be in worse shape, because if they were getting, yeah, if they were tariffing the inputs, they're not buying anything from the US. So
No,
yeah,
I
but
mean
they have all
they
kinds
don't.
of incentives in
Yeah,
China to build.
yeah. And then the final question for you is batteries. Where are we in the whole battery conversation? Firstly, where are we with the 4020s? Where are we with the low nickel batteries? I mean, what is happening in the battery supply chain for Tesla today?
Well, in general, what happened is as some of the EV industry pulled back, and really there's an oversupply of lithium ion cells in the world, the market price came down. When the market price comes down, the innovation, that I would say the pace of innovation gets stressed a bit, meaning it can slow down, because that trying to get to that next level. Some people say, "Oh no, that's not the case," but that's actually what happens if you get all the LFPs. I think we're at some point like below some spot pricing below $40 a kilowatt hour. These are things that were over $100 a kilowatt hour before. So the state of play is there's been a dramatic oversupply of cells. I think that caused some companies to change what they do. Now the tariff regime has come in, so there are separate tariffs for lithium ion. So there's still, if you're buying lithium ion buying anything from China, you still have the fentanyl tariff, you still have the reciprocal tariff, but there's also a separate lithium ion material and cell tariff. So you have tariffs from other countries. Okay. The Tesla has localized for vehicle production in the US. They either through partner allied countries and their own assembly in Nevada, and of course their own 4680. They are, I believe, all their batteries now are sourced in a manner that would give them credit for basically not being tariffed, or not being tariffed to these extreme levels. In terms of battery cells, so for Tesla, they want to get the 4680 operate. They want to get the dry operation up and going. That's the ticket. I think that's the unlock for multiple 4680 smaller operations to be bolted on to all of the factories, and for Tesla to use more of the 4680. And then of course they have the separate LFP effort. We have to see what the results of their patents are. Are those through the engineering phase? Are they realizable? If if the claim that Tesla makes is realizable in engineering and actual production, they think that they can build an LFP cell in the US that's cheaper than an untariffed China LFP. So that will be interesting to see. But I'm a little surprised that the factory announcement was only 10 gigawatt hours and not more. So I'd be interested to see what they're doing in the US. So US, they still have their Nevada operation. They still have their older chemistries that they've done there with more high nickel, 4680 high nickel, and then their LFP they're ramping up. They need to get this US LFP up,
Are
especially
they
for their
not?
stationary storage.
Don't they have LFP supplies from third parties like LG, for example, in Kentucky, I think?
I don't actually I don't believe so. Their LFP is just starting to ramp in the US. There's a company called AESC is one of them that's ramping. LG is setting up an operation with, I believe, I know Ford is working with SK. They may be working. GM is working with LG. LFP, by the way, just the global LFP supply. It's essentially a similar thing like rare earths. 90+% of the LFP supply is in China. And now every allied country of the US, including the US, is trying to bring up their own LFP. South Korea is doing it. We're doing it. But we're nowhere near the China capacity. China controls the LFP market.
So that I think that is, I guess, an issue. Is the 4680 the target? Is the target for the CyberCab 4680? I'm making the assumption. So the rate at which they can perfect and finalize the LF 4680 is pretty critical, as it
And I
would
think
be.
they would need the dry operation up and at scale for that. So
Right.
that may be becoming critical path. Otherwise, they would need a US LFP solution. But then I go back to the 10 gigawatt hours isn't enough. You have stationary storage, you have all these. So I mean, to me, there have to be more announcements coming on this front for LFP.
Yeah, sounds like we need a new investor day. I
Yeah.
mean, there's just so many moving parts that, there's no conversation about the semi, and the semi is about to start shipping out of that factory. Well, I don't know if it'll start shipping, but certainly in early next year, it's going to start shipping. Very little
Yeah.
conversation about that. That's a fairly large ticket item, and that's going to drive quite significant gross margin, I think.
Yeah.
I would hope. But then the question is battery supply for it. So there is a
Yeah.
lot of conversation. It doesn't seem to me that battery supply should be a constraint. It wouldn't be a constraint if it were not for the tariff picture. Is that a correct statement?
Yes. The tariff picture really complicates it. And they escalate. In January, they escalate again. So this is a separate lithium ion LFPs in that they escalate. And the concern, by the way, too, with importing LFP from China too, is like, what if there's, more specific country escalation with them, or some sort of national security concern about, control. There's been some findings in terms of people buying modules from China and finding, communication devices in them. So it's a very precarious situation. I think Tesla is going to source a tremendous amount of LFP for their China factory out of China. There's no question about that. It's a question of real, honestly, U.S. and European production, and in this race between their 4680 and their own patents there, and their engineering of those patents there, and they're making the production factory for that, and then this race of their LFP patents, engineering them into a solution that they can ramp the factory with. So I think all those build outs are happening from a factory perspective, but then they've got to get the final recipe from an engineering perspective to transmit to those factories.
Great questions being posed rather than answers being given. Jeff, thanks very much indeed. I
Yeah,
really,
great to be with you, Larry.
I think we need to catch up on this quite frequently, given the impact that it's going to have on bottom line in the coming years.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's critical to scale. And I think Tesla's well positioned, though. If you look at anybody else making these kind of products,
Right.
I think I can't think of somebody that's more well positioned. It doesn't mean that there aren't challenges there to deal with.
Right. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Larry. Great to be with you.
I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.